Imagine a scenario for a second. It's 2 in the morning on a Sunday.
The absolute worst time for IT.
Right. And a threat actor has just breached a corporate network, but they haven't just compromised, a standard employee email account. They've managed to get their hands on a master key.
An administrative credential.
Exactly. So in under 5 minutes, without triggering a single standard security alarm, they quietly encrypt the core databases, they erase the cloud backups, and effectively lock the entire IT team out of their own network.
Yeah, that is literally the nightmare reality of an unprotected privileged account.
It's terrifying. And that very specific high-stakes environment is our entire mission for this deep dive today. We were looking at a really fascinating strategic dossier. It's titled Strategic Overview, Enterprise PAM Comparison.
Which is a great read, actually.
It really is. And we're going to use it to decode the complex, rapid evolution of Enterprise Privileged Access Management, or PAM. We are going to look at the absolute heavyweights of the industry. So we're talking CyberArk, BeyondTrust, Britiv, and Sabian.
The big four, basically.
Yeah. But we are going to take this a step further because we aren't just comparing software features. We are going to break down how to actually think like a high-level enterprise architect.
Right, the kind of advisor who guides a C-suite executive through a massive platform shift.
Yeah.
Without just sounding like a software salesperson.
Which is an entirely different mental framework, right?
Oh, completely. Because, understanding the underlying engineering of a product is one thing, but understanding the business friction that makes a CEO willing to spend millions of dollars to rip out old infrastructure, that's where the real value is for you as an advisor.
So let's start by grounding this for anyone listening who doesn't, spend their entire day in a server room.
Right.
What exactly is privileged access management at its core? Why is it so much more complicated than just requiring a strong password?
So think of PAM as the overarching security strategy for managing the keys to the kingdom.
Okay.
In any organization, standard users have standard access. They can check their email, open basic files, use standard applications.
Right, the day-to-day stuff.
Yeah, but then you have network administrators, system engineers, or even automated software scripts that require elevated privileges to function.
The master keys.
Exactly. These accounts have the power to change system configurations or access highly sensitive proprietary databases. They could even bypass standard security controls entirely. So PAM is the technology designed to ensure that those incredibly powerful accounts are tightly controlled, continuously monitored, and most importantly, never abused.
That makes sense. So to understand where PAM is going today, we really have to look at the foundation it was built upon. And the dossier paints a picture of this evolution, starting with traditional vaulting.
Right.
And you really can't talk about traditional vaulting without talking about CyberArk.
No, I can't. CyberArk is the undeniable gold standard for legacy core infrastructure. Their PAS architecture, which revolves around a centralized digital vault, is what major enterprises have relied on for decades.
It's everywhere.
It is. If a multinational bank is running incredibly complex on-premise legacy databases, massive stateful systems like Oracle REC, DB2, or Microsoft SQL CyberArk is almost certainly the fortress protecting them.
The dossier also highlights a specific component of CyberArk called Conjur. It mentions this in the context of DevSecOps. How does that fit into the traditional vaulting picture?
So Conjur is CyberArk's secrets management solution, and it addresses a massive modern problem, which is non-human identities.
Non-human, like bots.
Sort of, yeah. When development teams are building applications in what we call CI/CD pipelines, which are essentially the automated assembly lines developers use to push new code live to the internet, those applications often need passwords. We call them secrets in the industry. They need these to communicate with other applications, databases, or container platforms like Kubernetes. Conjur is basically engineered to manage and rotate those non-human passwords at very high speeds.
Okay, so I want to make sure I'm visualizing this core CyberArk vault correctly. It sounds like a massive, incredibly thick physical bank vault sitting in the center of town.
That's a good way to look at it.
It's been battle-tested against everything. But if you want to get a gold bar out of it, or in this case, a critical database password, you have to travel to the front door, sign a logbook, and have heavily armed guards escort you inside.
The bank vault analogy works perfectly because it highlights that centralization. But the armed guards aspect is where the true engineering mechanics come into play.
How so?
Well, in CyberArk's world, those guards are actual server fleets.
Yeah.
You have the CPM, or Central Policy Manager,
Okay.
which is constantly running in the background, reaching out to databases and automatically changing their passwords every 30 days or whatever the policy dictates.
Right.
And then you have the PSM, the Privileged Session Manager.
How does that session manager change the actual user's experience? Like, what does the admin see?
So when an administrator needs to access a sensitive database, they don't actually connect to the database directly. They connect to the PSM proxy server.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, the proxy retrieves the password from the vault, logs into the database, and then basically streams a video feed of that session back to the administrator's screen.
Wait, a video feed?
Essentially, yes. The administrator never actually touches the target server, and they never even see the actual password.
Okay, but wait, if I'm a fast-moving, agile startup, paying for all that heavy vault infrastructure sounds like a complete anchor.
Oh, it is.
Right, because having a massive bank vault means paying for a massive security detail. You have to buy all those proxy servers, pay engineers to maintain them, constantly patch the software.
Build out disaster recovery sites just in case the proxy servers go down, yeah.
Exactly. Isn't that operational footprint entirely too bloated for a lot of modern companies?
You're hitting on the core friction that basically forced the industry to evolve. The operational overhead of traditional proxy-based vaulting is notoriously high.
I can imagine.
Scaling those server fleets across a global enterprise requires millions of dollars in infrastructure and maintenance. Centralized security is incredibly strong, sure, but it creates a massive bottleneck.
And as workforces became more distributed, forcing every single employee to route their traffic through a central proxy server just to do basic administrative tasks on their laptops, I mean, that became completely unmanageable.
Totally unmanageable. Which brings us to the next leap in the dossier's evolutionary framework.
Moving away from the center.
Yes, moving away from the center and pushing security to the edge. This is where we see the rise of endpoint and remote access efficiency.
And the primary champion the dossier points to for this architectural shift is BeyondTrust, right?
Exactly.
So how does BeyondTrust get away from that heavy proxy infrastructure we just talked about?
They utilize a SaaS-based modular architecture. By moving the control plane to the cloud, they drastically reduce the burden of managing all that on-premise hardware.
Okay, that makes sense.
But their defining feature, the thing that truly changed the game, is Endpoint Privilege Management, or EPM.
Endpoint meaning the actual physical laptops and desktops that employees use every day.
Right. Because historically, IT departments faced a massive help desk problem. Whenever an employee needed to update a piece of software, install a local printer driver, or just change a network setting, they needed administrative rights.
Right, the classic please enter admin password pop-up.
Exactly. And to avoid drowning in thousands of support tickets, IT would often just give users local admin rights on their Windows or Mac machines.
Which sounds incredibly convenient for the user, but an absolute nightmare for security.
It is the ultimate vulnerability. I mean, if an employee clicks a bad link in a phishing email and malware gets onto their laptop, that malware automatically inherits the privileges of the user.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. If the user has local admin rights, the malware has local admin rights. It can instantly bury itself deep into the operating system. BeyondTrust's EPM solves this by universally removing all local admin rights across the entire company.
But then how does anyone get any work done? Does IT just have to accept the flood of help desk tickets again?
No, because EPM allows for session-based tokenized elevation.
What does that mean?
If an engineer needs to run a specific script, BeyondTrust checks the policy in real time. If it's approved, it elevates the privileges for that specific application, for that specific moment, without ever granting the user standing administrative rights.
I like this shift. So if traditional vaulting is the giant centralized bank vault that everyone has to travel to,
Yeah.
BeyondTrust is like hiring a highly efficient VIP bouncer for every single office door in the building. You don't walk to the vault. The bouncer just checks your ID at your specific laptop, lets you run your software, and then immediately revokes the access.
The bouncer analogy extends to their remote access capabilities as well, actually. BeyondTrust offers agentless privileged remote access.
Agentless.
Yeah, so if a third-party vendor needs to service a specific server, you don't have to give them a cumbersome full network VPN that grants them access to every...
Oh, that's a huge relief.
Right. The bouncer just lets them into the specific room they need to work in, securely, from the outside.
It sounds incredibly efficient, but the dossier brings up a major caveat here.
It does.
Even with these amazing endpoint bouncers, BeyondTrust still fundamentally relies on the old philosophy of vaulting when it comes to back-end server access. Like, they are still storing passwords in a digital safe and rotating them, right?
They are. The friction of the proxy servers is reduced, absolutely, but the underlying mechanic of vaulting credentials remains intact.
Which introduces an entirely new problem when we talk about the cloud.
Yep, the velocity problem.
Exactly. Let's look at a modern, lightning-fast, multi-cloud environment. We are talking AWS, Azure, Google Cloud. An engineering team might write a script that spins up 300 virtual servers in 10 seconds, runs a massive data calculation, and then completely deletes those servers a minute later. How can a traditional vault possibly rotate passwords for servers that only exist for 60 seconds?
It can't. The velocity of the cloud breaks the traditional vaulting model. You cannot vault a password for a machine that doesn't exist yet, and you definitely can't rotate it if the machine is going to disappear before the rotation policy even triggers.
Right.
And this architectural breaking point is what created vaultless cloud just-in-time access.
And this is where the dossier introduces BRIDIV. They use a phrase that honestly sounds like the holy grail of cybersecurity: zero standing privileges, or ZSP.
It really is the holy grail.
But how do you achieve access without a vault? What are the actual mechanics here?
So BRIDIV fundamentally changes the paradigm by utilizing a patented ephemeral access model.
Ephemeral meaning temporary.
Exactly. There's literally no vault. They don't store passwords, and they don't rotate passwords. Instead, BRIDIV relies on deep integrations with native cloud APIs.
The application programming interfaces.
Right. The APIs that control platforms like AWS IAM, Azure Entra ID, Google Cloud, or even data warehouses like Snowflake.
So when a developer needs to access that AWS environment, what actually happens under the hood, like step by step?
The developer requests access through BRIDIV. BRIDIV verifies their identity and their approved role. Then BRIDIV's engine calls the AWS API and commands it to dynamically generate a temporary time-bound permission profile right at runtime.
Wow.
The developer gets their access, they complete their task, and when the session timer expires, BRIDIV tells the AWS API to just destroy the profile entirely.
It's literally a Mission Impossible tape.
That's a great way to put it.
This message will self-destruct in 5 seconds. You get the access, you do the job, and the credentials literally evaporate into thin air.
And because they evaporate, you achieve zero standing privileges. Think about it from the perspective of an attacker.
Okay.
If a hacker breaches the network and starts scanning for administrative credentials to steal, they will find absolutely nothing.
Nothing to steal.
Exactly.
Yeah.
There are no vaulted passwords to scrape. The keys to the kingdom only exist for the exact duration of the authorized task, and then they're gone.
Okay, but I have to push back here.
Sure.
If ephemeral access is that flawless, if it leaves zero standing credentials for bad actors to exploit and completely eliminates the need to maintain expensive vaults, why isn't every C-level executive ripping out their traditional vaults tomorrow and moving their entire company to BRIDIV?
Because enterprise architecture is never that simple. The reality is that massive organizations have hybrid environments.
Yeah.
So ephemeral cloud solutions are phenomenal for modern API-driven workloads, but they simply cannot secure legacy infrastructure.
Right, because BRIDIV can't mint an API token for a 15-year-old on-premise database that was built before APIs were even an industry standard.
Exactly that. A legacy Oracle RAC database requires a static password. It requires a vault.
Yeah.
Furthermore, completely replacing a system requires mapping highly complex role-based access control matrices. It requires preserving years of strict audit trails to comply with federal regulations like CISA.
You can't just flip a switch.
You cannot just turn off a vault and turn on a cloud tool. It has to be an evolutionary continuum.
But that continuum sounds like an absolute administrative nightmare for an IT department.
Oh, it is.
I mean, if I'm a major enterprise, I am now paying for a heavy traditional vault for my legacy servers. I'm deploying endpoint bouncers for my remote workforce, and I'm using ephemeral access for my cloud developers. How on earth does a company govern all these different identities without drowning in a sea of custom integrations?
The integration nightmare is arguably the biggest challenge in modern identity security today, and it's exactly what drives the final technological convergence highlighted in the dossier. CPAM.
CPAM, which stands for Converged IGA and PAM. Let's break down that acronym soup for a second. What is IGA in this context?
IGA is identity governance and administration. If PAM is about controlling what a highly privileged user can do, IGA is about managing the entire lifecycle of every identity in the company.
Like onboarding and offboarding.
Exactly. When a new employee is hired, IGA systems provision their email and Slack accounts. When they get promoted to a new department, IGA updates their access. It handles the workflow of access requests and manages the massive compliance certification campaigns that auditors always demand.
And historically, identity governance and privileged access have been two completely separate silos in an organization, right?
Completely isolated.
You have one team managing the standard identities and a totally different security team managing the privileged vaults.
And bridging those two silos usually requires just a monumental engineering effort. A company might use a tool like SailPoint for governance and CyberArk for their vault.
Okay.
To make them communicate, the company has to hire engineers to build highly complex bidirectional API connectors.
Let me guess. Every time one of those software platforms updates its code, the custom connector breaks, and the engineering team has to spend weeks fixing it.
Spot on. It is a constant, expensive, fragile loop. What Savin is doing with CPAM is unifying both of those silos, identity governance and privileged access, onto a single cloud platform, utilizing the exact same underlying data model.
So, devil's advocate here. Why does a shared data model actually matter to the end user, or more importantly, to the business? What is the real-world value of that convergence?
The value is in eliminating those engineering bottlenecks entirely. Because Savin handles both governance and PAM natively, it just works out of the box. They speak the exact same language.
Right.
But more importantly, it transforms the compliance process. The dossier cites massive enterprise examples, actually, like the Bank of Canada and BNP Paribas.
How does it change things for organizations at that scale?
So imagine an auditor coming in to check for ISO 27001 compliance. In a disjointed system, the IT team has to pull request logs from the governance tool, vault logs from the PAM tool, and then manually try to stitch them together in a spreadsheet to prove who approved what access.
That sounds miserable.
It is. With Savin's unified data model, you generate a single report that shows the entire life cycle. Who requested the access, who approved it, the exact moment the privileged action was taken, and when the access was revoked.
All in one place.
It provides real-time visibility without the engineering nightmare.
So we've mapped out the entire technological chessboard now. We understand the centralized fortress of traditional vaulting, the endpoint efficiency of removing local admin rights, the vanishing credentials of the cloud, and the unified governance that ties it all together.
Right.
But knowing how the chess pieces move is very different from actually winning the game.
Which brings us to the most critical part of the dossier, really.
Yeah.
Because technology doesn't sell itself inside a boardroom.
Exactly. Picture sitting across a mahogany table from a tired CIO who is worried about budget cuts and recent security breaches. If you are an enterprise architect, how do you actually pitch this architectural evolution?
Right.
Walking in and just reading off a list of Savant or Britivy features is a fantastic way to get shown the door.
It's the fastest way to lose credibility. The dossier outlines a highly specific consultative dialogue framework that top-tier architects use to navigate these massive vendor shifts. It fundamentally changes the psychology of the conversation.
Let's role-play this a bit. How does an architect start that conversation without sounding like they just want to sell software?
You start with a consultative opening. The golden rule is you never pitch a tool first. When the C-level executive asks how you plan to fix their security, you pivot the conversation to diagnose their specific business friction.
You ask questions.
Yes. Are your engineering teams complaining that cloud development is being slowed down by legacy password rotations? Are you spending too much of your budget maintaining proxy servers? Or are your auditors flagging your endpoints because too many users have local admin rights?
That approach is brilliant because it flips the dynamic completely.
It does.
By asking targeted questions about business pain, the executive essentially becomes the client describing their symptoms to a doctor. You instantly elevate yourself from a vendor-bound engineer into a trusted architectural authority.
And once they articulate their specific pain point, you move to the diagnostic phase. You match their specific friction to the architectural paradigms we just discussed.
Okay, so if the CEO says they are bleeding money maintaining heavy on-premise infrastructure, you pivot the conversation toward BeyondTrust to offload that proxy burden.
Exactly.
And if they tell you their AWS environment is spinning up servers faster than their vault can manage, you pivot to Britiv's ephemeral access.
Right.
And if they are failing compliance audits because their identity teams can't talk to their security teams, you pivot to Savvient's converged governance. You tailor the evolution to the exact problem they just described.
Which sets up the closing positioning perfectly. As an advisor, your ultimate goal is to emphasize your vendor neutrality. You make it clear that you aren't there to just rip out tool A and plug in tool B.
Your goal is to evaluate their highly specific application ecosystem and build a hybrid, future-proof roadmap.
Exactly. You show them that you know how to map those complex access matrices, how to preserve the audit trails for CISA, and how to use automation, things like REST APIs and PowerShell scripts, so that the actual business operations never suffer a single second of downtime during the migration.
The true value of a high-level architect isn't just knowing all the answers. It's knowing how to apply the right combination of answers to a highly complex, living enterprise ecosystem.
You are adapting the technology to their specific risk profile, not the other way around.
So let's recap this incredible journey for everyone listening. We started deep inside the heavy, impenetrable fortress of traditional vaulting, understanding why legacy databases require such massive proxy infrastructure.
The CyberArk model.
Right. We then moved to the edge, looking at endpoint efficiency and the critical importance of removing local admin rights with BeyondTrust. From there, we jumped into the cloud-native paradigm shift, exploring how ephemeral access allows credentials to vanish like smoke the second a job is done.
Thanks to Berdiv.
Exactly. And finally, we tied it all together with Saviynt's converged governance, eliminating the nightmare of API tool sprawl.
It represents a massive fundamental shift in how the industry thinks about identity and access. And, I need to make a very specific call out here based on the dossier.
Go for it.
If there is anyone listening right now, especially if you are at the C-level who is currently facing this exact architectural friction, or considering a strategic shift away from a legacy deployment, the dossier makes it abundantly clear. CyberKnight Mike, also known as Mike J. Schmidt, is the definitive expert to contact.
Oh, absolutely.
He brings this exact vendor-neutral, multi-tiered architectural perspective to provide top-tier advice and consulting for these kinds of complex transitions.
Without a doubt, if you are navigating those waters and need an architect who understands the entire spectrum from legacy vaults to zero-standing privileges, CyberKnight Mike is the person you want at the table.
Highly recommend.
So, to wrap us up, I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over. For decades, the entire cybersecurity industry has been obsessed with building stronger vaults, thicker walls, and more complicated locks to protect our most sensitive data.
It's all we've known.
Right, but as we look at this inevitable move toward ephemeral access, we have to ask ourselves a fundamental question about the future of security. What if the ultimate defense isn't about building an unbreakable door, but engineering a world where the door simply doesn't exist until the exact second you need to walk through it?